Coming up today, the leaders of Korea and Japan will attend events this afternoon to mark the 50th anniversary of the normalization of their diplomatic ties. On this day, we'll take a look back at the two countries' shared history. Lawmakers are questioning government officials about their plans to boost the economy amid the extra strain caused by the ongoing drought and the MERS outbreak. Plus, Korea reports 2 more deaths from MERS, bringing the death toll to 27. 3 new cases are also confirmed. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Monday, the 22nd of June. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, diplomatic celebrations will be held in Seoul and Tokyo later today to mark the 50th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic ties between the two countries. And in a last-minute surprise move, the leaders of the two countries will be attending events hosted by their respective embassies. Korea's presidential office of Cheongwadae says President Park Geun-hye will attend the Japanese embassy's reception in Seoul, where she plans to deliver a speech. The presidential office also confirmed that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will make his appearance at a similar ceremony hosted by the Korean embassy in Tokyo. Meanwhile, Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, who is in Japan, paid a courtesy call to Abe earlier today. During their meeting, Abe is said to have expressed his hope to work with President Park for the sake of people in both countries and for the future generations. Now, cultural exchanges between Korea and Japan look a bit like the current political atmosphere at the moment, flat and uninspired. The number of cultural events held in the two countries has slumped by a third of the level seen 10 years ago, when 2005 was designated the year of Korea-Japan friendship. Sohn Jung-in takes a look at the current state of affairs.
When Korea's top Hallyu star Bae-jun announced his wedding plans with actress Park Soo-jin, the news quickly spread to dominate Japan's entertainment headlines and social media sites. In November last year, Korean pop group JYJ held a concert in Tokyo Dome, drawing a staggering 100,000 fans. Hallyu, or the Korean wave, is still popular in Japan, but it's quickly running out of steam. On the political front, Korea and Japan haven't held a summit in 3 years, and the number of cultural exchange events has dropped sharply due to the ongoing territorial and historical issues between the two countries.
There used to be around 300 diverse cultural events every year, but now, despite the fact this year marks the 50th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic relations, we are expecting fewer than 100 events.
The significant turning point for Hallyu came in 1998, when Korea decided to open its doors to Japanese pop culture. Flowing the other way, hit Korean dramas like Winter Sonata and Jewel in the Palace caused a sensation, followed by the K-pop boom, which swept major charts in the country's music industry. But the Korean wave hit a barrier when the popularity was challenged by right-wing Japanese politicians whose negative comments towards it were fueled by Tokyo's diplomatic friction with Seoul. There are growing calls to put current political issues aside and rekindle the dying embers of bilateral cultural exchanges in order to re-energize mutual understanding and trust between the two nations. Sohn Jung-in, Arirang News.
So today marks a highly significant anniversary for Korea and Japan, marking the 50th year of the normalization of their diplomatic relations. Our Hwang Sang-hee takes us through the key points of the past 50 years and shows us where the two nations currently stand.
On June 22, 1965, Korea and Japan agreed to begin a new chapter in their relations, leaving behind decades of unfortunate history. The normalization of their diplomatic relations, a result of 14 years of lengthy negotiations, secured economic aid for Korea and post-war settlement for Japan.
The Korea-Japan Treaty officially came into effect at 5 p.m. on June 22nd, leaving behind the unfortunate Korea-Japan relations of the past and paving the way for a grand new history.
With the financial help of Japan, Korea rose from the ashes of war and underwent major growth. Half a century later, the two neighbors are the closest of economic partners, with bilateral trade volume jumping nearly 400-fold. But unresolved issues remain. In their treaty, Seoul and Tokyo had failed to address Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of hundreds and thousands of Korean women. The issue came to light in 1991 with the testimony of one of the victims and is now the biggest point of contention between the two neighbors. Seoul is demanding a sincere apology and compensation from the Japanese government, while Tokyo claims that the issue was resolved by a 1995 landmark apology issued by then Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama. While the top diplomats from the two countries failed to reach a deal on the comfort women issue during their meeting on Sunday, they did make some progress on other matters.
We held a cordial, honest, and constructive 3-hour discussion on issues of mutual interest.
Seoul's foreign ministry said the two sides agreed to smoothly resolve the issue of Japan's UNESCO bid, hinting that Tokyo is willing to clearly state the historical background of its wartime industrial facilities as sites of forced labor for nearly 60,000 Koreans. But whether that's enough for the two neighbors to fully break the ice remains to be seen. 황상희, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome here in Korea. And like the health ministry said just last week, the MERS virus appears to be on the decline, with only a very small uptick in the number of cases being reported over the past few days. For more, we now go over to the news centre, where our Han is standing by. Dan, fill us in.
Mark, the government has gone all out to contain this disease on the back of mounting criticism for weak initial response. Well, after a month, it looks like things may be under control. Only 3 more cases were confirmed overnight, all of which were contracted within hospitals. One at Konkuk University Medical Center in Seoul, one at Samsung Medical Center also in Seoul, and the other at Daecheong Hospital in Daejeon. As of today, Korea has confirmed a total of 172 MERS patients and 27 deaths, with the deadly virus claiming 2 more lives overnight. The deceased were aged 84 and 97 with pre-existing illnesses, including cancer. The number of suspected patients in quarantine dropped for a 4th straight day to slightly over 3,830, with about 520 being released today. There are now 50 people who have recovered from MERS. Now let's bring in another chart. If you take a look, you'll notice how the number of MERS patients undergoing treatment is clearly on the decline. We have 95 patients now being treated at medical facilities, which is 30 less patients from June 17th, just 5 days ago. It's not overwhelming, but the numbers are decreasing. Mark?
Yeah, we can see very clearly by that chart there. And Dan, we hear that Korea's business leaders gathered this morning in efforts to revitalize the domestic economy that has been hurting pretty hard because of the impact of this MERS outbreak.
That's right, Mark. Board members of the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KORCHAM, held an emergency meeting in Seoul to seek ways to put an early stop to the MERS-triggered economic slump. Some of the key figures included Vice Chairman of Lotte Shopping Corporation Lee In-won and Shinsegae Group Vice Chairman Chung Yong-jin. They vowed to increase weakened investment, employment, and consumption through various measures. They also said they'll provide full support to attract foreigners to Korea, tourists and business personnel alike. They also urged the government to earmark a portion of the MERS supplementary budget for the nation's businesses. The business leaders are unified in their message that it is not the time for groundless fears, but rather for optimism and confidence. That's the latest MERS update. We'll have more in our future newscasts. Back to you.
Now, the economic impact of the MERS outbreak is one of the hottest topics at the National Assembly today on the 2nd day of its interpellation session. 9 top government officials, including the Prime Minister, Finance Minister and Trade Minister, are attending the session, which began a couple of hours ago. They're answering questions from lawmakers from the main rival parties. Now, lawmakers have been grilling the ministers on the government's plans to secure a supplementary budget to assist those hit hard by the MERS outbreak. They've also been probing the officials on how the government will counter the nation's ballooning household debt mountain and help those struggling to make ends meet. Measures to assist farmers suffering damages due to the drought are also on the agenda. The interpellation sessions will continue through Wednesday. A private think tank in Seoul estimates that Korea's total debt, public and private, could have already surpassed $4.3 trillion. The Korea Economic Research Institute says that as of 2013, Korea's total debt, and that includes household, corporate and government debt, was nearly 340% of the country's total GDP. The think tank noted that government debt was not as high compared to most other countries. However, it added that the nation's household and corporate debt needs to be monitored as those figures are higher than most other countries. The report said that Korea's debt issues could be aggravated if the US Federal Reserve hikes rates as expected this year, as Korea's central bank could be forced to bump up its key benchmark rate as well. Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics is expected to sell 45 million units of its latest Galaxy S6 and S6 Edge smartphones this year, but that's actually falling short of earlier market expectations. According to a report by Wall Street analysts at Deutsche Bank, who visited nearly 30 companies in Korea, Taiwan and Japan, Samsung continues to struggle at the low to mid end, but is on course to sell, quote, respectable, end quote, quantities of the devices. Global market analyst provider DRAM Exchange had earlier estimated combined sales of 55 million units for the Galaxy S6 series this year, while Hong Kong-based Counterpoint Research projected sales of 50 million. Now, if Deutsche Bank's 45 million estimate is reached, then the newest lineup will still manage to break Samsung's annual sales record held by the Galaxy S4. Sales of dried and frozen fruits have spiked in Korea as more people are looking to supplement their diets with more vitamins to build their immunity against the MERS virus. According to an online shopping site, Gmarket, on Monday, sales of dried fruits jumped six-fold during the mid-May to mid-June period compared to the same period last year, with sales of dried mango and pineapple topping the list. Sales of frozen fruit jumped 20% during the same period. Gmarket attributes the sales increase to the prolonged drought as fruit harvests are down and consumers are looking for alternatives to get their vitamins. And farmers across Korea felt some much-needed relief in the form of rain over the weekend, but it was hardly enough to get things back on track. Global weather patterns have been causing a lot of unpredictable weather here in Korea, and the prolonged drought is drying up resources. Our Lee Ju-young reports.
The continued drought across the country has his poultry farm owner worried sick. He says his chicks are barely getting by with the 7 tons of water provided once a day. And he's even more concerned as the day to ship them out approaches. When that day comes, they'll need twice the amount of water.
I'm most worried about chicks dying in large numbers since they have no water to drink. As you can see, I even bought my own water tank.
The situation is not so much different at this fish farm. The owner says he's been having to pick out some 100 dead fish per day, with his underground water supply dried up and arid conditions showing no signs of improvement. He says he has no choice but to share water with other farmers given the dire situation, and the quality of his trout has dropped so much that they're not sellable on the market.
Fish farms can't stand a single hour without water. Farmland can go for days. But as trout is a cold water fish, it's hard for them to survive even without just a few hours of fresh water.
Experts say the aridity in Korea is mainly due to the warm phase of El Niño, which typically brings floods for countries in Latin America, but can cause long dry spells in Asian and East African countries. Authorities predict the drought in Korea will drag out to as long as next January. The government has agreed to pour in some $56 million to develop countermeasures and offer support for damages caused by the long dry spell. Lee Ju-young, Arirang News.
Now, with the clock ticking before a crucial summit which could have huge implications for Europe, Greece's Prime Minister has made a new offer on reforms that could signal a late deal in the country's debt talks with its international creditors. A statement from the office of Alexis Tsipras says he gave European leaders a proposal for what he said was a mutually beneficial agreement that will give a definitive solution and not a postponement of addressing the core problem. Since his office didn't really elaborate on the offer, it's unclear what concessions have been included in it. The Prime Minister's proposal come ahead of this emergency EU summit in Brussels on Monday. Greece has until June 30th to make a $1.8 billion loan repayment to the IMF, or risk crashing out of the Eurozone and possibly even the EU. The names of 9 people murdered at an African-American church in South Carolina have been read out in a service as the church where the brutal shooting took place reopened on Sunday. There was very tight security as hundreds of people crammed into the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston for the service on Sunday morning local time. One of the pastors giving a speech at the ceremony said the songs and speeches were the sound of forgiveness in a place visited by hatred. Meanwhile, a racist manifesto believed to have been written by the alleged killer, 21-year-old Dylan Roof, has been discovered online. The website, which shows a number of photos of the suspect, contains several racist rants, including outlining his hatred towards black people, Jews, and Latin Americans. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Have a wonderful start to the week, and thank you as always for watching. And we do hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Until then, goodbye.